Welcome to It's a Math World, where you'll review concepts from the mathematical reasoning strand. This podcast will specifically address helping children to communicate about math and to learn how to represent their math ideas. Let's do a quick review. In the GELDS, inside the cognitive development domain, you'll see the subdomain of mathematics. The mathematics subdomain has 4 strands. The mathematical reasoning strand has one standard, which says the child will use mathematical problem solving, reasoning, estimation, and communication. Below that standard, there are 3 different indicators: 7.4a, 7.4b, and 7.4c. The indicators in this strand tend to be the most difficult for teachers to teach students, because the children are expected to begin to use higher order thinking skills. Some adults even feel as though problem solving and the other skills mentioned in these indicators are too advanced for young children who are in pre-K, but this is inaccurate. Children can problem solve and perform all of the outlined skills in the mathematical reasoning strand if they are introduced in an age-appropriate, relevant, and rich way. Communication is a key word that's mentioned in 2 of the mathematical reasoning indicators, both 7.4b and 7.4c, requiring that children communicate either how they solved a math problem or why they reached a specific solution to a math problem. This podcast is designed to illustrate how to do this with pre-K children and how to take them to the next step, which is creating a representation of what they communicated or what they were thinking. Let's first think about what we know about children. There are a few characteristics that 4-year-olds exhibit that are almost universal. They love to talk, and they love to draw and make things. These same skills are what enable a child to communicate and represent in the area of math. Most children can elaborate on topics for an extended period of time to the point where their parents or even their teachers or caregivers will discourage the lengthy communication. It's important that we don't react in this way because communication is a skill we do not want to discourage. The NCTM, the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics, states that language, whether used to express ideas or receive them, is a very powerful tool and should be used to foster the learning of mathematics. This further demonstrates the importance of helping children learn to use language to communicate math thoughts. When it comes to communication about math, children must learn to articulate, clarify, and organize math thinking orally and eventually use representations. We'll talk about representation a little later, but first let's talk briefly about encouraging communication as it's related to math. Through children's communication efforts, teachers can find out more about their thinking and what they know. Even if a child struggles to explain his math ideas using the incorrect wording, the attempt to explain causes him to become more conscious of what he knows and how to solve problems. Since children are actively developing communication skills at this age, we must provide multiple opportunities throughout the day for them to practice, before expecting them to become proficient in this skill of communicating and applying it to math concepts and problem solving. To increase communication in the classroom, teachers can implement simple ideas like having a talking box that's filled with random items and have a timer set for 30 seconds to a minute. Allow children to pull an item out and have a chance to say whatever they'd like about that item for the specified amount of time until the timer sounds. Although this is not a math activity, communication activities like this will assist children with verbalizing something specific. These types of games will be especially helpful for those students who need a little bit of guidance to open up and talk. One way to increase communication in relation to problem solving is through the use of pictures. These can be photographs or even drawings. This picture is a child's drawing of several animals. This child was asked some questions to get her talking about her picture. When she was asked math-specific questions, the communication she was able to use gave a clear idea of her understanding in solving the problem and what her thinking was when she was solving it. The child was asked how many eyes her animals had, knowing that only some of the eyes were visible. She looked at her picture for a while and pointed to each one a few times and said, 22. 22 eyes. She was asked, how do you know? And she said, all the animals have 2 eyes, so I counted by 2s. The teacher said, I see what you did now. Then she was asked how she could keep track of them if she only saw 1 eye on some animals, and she proceeded to draw the diagram to show all of the eyes accounted for. Granted, this child may be more advanced than some of your pre-K students starting out, but these are the types of activities that get children talking about their problem-solving methods. The next step after getting children to learn to communicate their thinking is to get them representing their thinking. Representation is a skill that falls within the problem-solving indicators. It is specified in the math continuum as an extending stage to problem-solving. Representation means that children will actually represent what they know through a medium other than talking. Being able to verbalize what they know is one skill, while being able to show what they know is another skill. Providing meaningful context that encourages children to communicate and then represent their understanding is the teacher's role. You should introduce children to a wide range of representations by modeling. Modeling should be pictorial and symbolic. Pictorial representations include graphs, drawings, maps, or timelines. Symbolic representations mean tables and other symbols that may organize thinking. Children should learn that representations help them remember what they did or how they figured out their answer. One way that you can begin to get children representing what they know is to incorporate math journals. Math journals can be adapted to fit the needs of your children and can be implemented however you choose. Here are some tips and examples to get you started. When creating math journals for children, make sure that each child has their own journal to capture their thoughts. The journals can be informal and can vary from classroom to classroom. Some teachers choose to do one journal throughout the year, and others prefer to create a journal each semester for children. This is a personal choice and can be done however you choose. On the front cover of each journal, be sure to specify that it's a math journal. Children need to understand that this journal has a specific purpose and is different from a free writing journal that they may have access to. It does not have to be an actual notebook, and it doesn't even have to have lines. It can be pages of white or colored paper compiled with some sort of cover. It's a good practice to allow children to decorate their journal cover so that they can gain ownership. On the inside of the journal, it's helpful for this age group to have the directions for that particular entry pre-printed. Look at the example. It's also a good idea to have an area to write the date so that you can see the progression of the child's work. Let's look at sample entries that would be fitting for each strand. Take a second to read this first entry for number and quantity. This one, titled Cupcake Party, requires the children to use number sense and counting. take a moment to read the second entry for geometry and spatial thinking. This entry is an open-ended question that allows children to be creative. Now, look at the third entry, which is for measurement and geometry. This entry is also open-ended, allowing children to have different answers according to each child's thought process. Look at the fourth entry, which is placed under mathematical reasoning. This activity is one that requires children to use problem solving and several other skills. It's also open-ended, allowing children to come up with different answers. This activity was derived from the book 100 Hungry Ants, which is an excellent book to use as an introduction to this type of problem. Here's another problem-solving entry that allows for various answers depending on how children choose to draw their butterflies. These sample entries should give you an idea of how to create math journals for your students. Now, here are a few good characteristics of math journal questions. A good math journal question allows opportunities for students to learn by answering the question and teachers to learn about each student from the attempt. It may have more than one solution. It requires more than just remembering a skill or reproducing a fact. It provides the opportunity for students to show their different ways of thinking. It can be represented with physical materials or drawings. It has clear, concise directions. It provides opportunities for group work and discussion. And most importantly, it captures the interests of children. Teachers often ask this question: how often should the children use their journal? The answer is there is no set number of times. However, like most things, the more often it's used, the more beneficial it will be. NCTM states that throughout the early years, students should have daily opportunities to talk and write about math. So see what's conducive to your schedule and integrate math journals as much as you can. We hope you found this podcast to be both informational and useful. Be creative and find ways to implement or increase communication and representation of math concepts into your day. You'll be amazed at how your students develop into little problem solvers and mini mathematicians.